Hello everyone, my name is Jason Florian, and I'm here with...
Mike Brizendine, head men's soccer coach at Virginia Tech.
And welcome to another sporting interview, and we will just get straight into it with Coach Briz.
That's right.
So, to start off the interview, I would like for you to just briefly talk about your college career as a player and your goal-scoring ability as well at JMU as a Duke.
Yeah, thanks. It's funny, I haven't thought about that in 25 years. It seems like forever ago. But yeah, I was a forward. I grew up in the DC area and went to JMU, had a great experience. Yeah, we had some really good teams back then, and the landscape was very, very different. It's interesting because Virginia Tech at that time, nobody who was really good at soccer would come to Virginia Tech unless you were an engineer and architect. Yeah, we had good teams. I played up front, and yeah, scored a couple of goals, and that was fun. It was a fun time, but again, it seems like forever ago.
This is a silly question, but when you would score, do you remember what was the go-to celebration?
I have no idea. I don't think there was one. I was just happy. Got a couple of hugs from the teammates and moved on. You know, again, I think that's more of a new phenomenon, like these dances, poses, all that stuff. Like, we just huddled up, congrats, and went back to business.
One of my favorite ones right now with the current men's team is number 15. I forget his last name, but he does the LeBron James silencer.
Mm-hmm.
He goes like, he scores, and it's really entertaining, so
Yeah.
it's fun.
Hopefully he'll keep it up.
Yep.
Because that means he's scoring goals, which that's what I like.
Yeah. And my sister went to JMU,
Oh, nice.
and she graduated in 2021.
Awesome.
So I've been to the campus. It's really nice. I almost considered going there as well when it was,
Yeah.
decision day time
Yeah,
4
right.
years ago. And I currently know a couple players on the team. I don't know if you know him. It's a well-known person from my hometown.
What's
His
his
name
name?
is Jeffrey Aguilar.
I know Jeff. Plays up front, little guy.
Yeah, he's really good.
Yeah, he is very good. He's quick as a cat. Yeah, I watch their games, being an alum, and in the business. So I always enjoy watching them. They have a good team, really good coach. So it's good, and it's actually funny, like hearing you talk about that, about decision time. JMU, when I went to JMU, was similar to Blacksburg, kind of a smaller town feel. It's very different now, but that was the thing that was very attractive to me. And I'm actually glad I didn't come down to Blacksburg because I would have been very drawn to this town and this school back then, like I am now, just because it's a great community.
So was Harrisonburg, like, how would you say it's different compared to Blacksburg?
Oh, now it's expanded. It's huge. I think in Blacksburg, the school and the town are in sync with each other. They work really well together. I don't think that's the case in Harrisonburg. There's a distinct town, there's a distinct school, and I don't think they always play nice in the sandbox together. So it's very, very different. And again, it's just gotten huge, So again, I like our little oasis here in the mountains.
Do you like the purple and gold or the maroon and orange better?
Oh, I like our colors better.
Really?
I never liked purple and gold.
No way. I like the purple and gold more. I usually wear it on campus too sometimes here.
Yeah, I think you're probably a little more flashy than me. Remember, I'm old dude, so basic colors are really good for me.
Okay, so moving on to post-college, you continue to play in Roanoke and in Northern Virginia. Was that a semi-pro thing? Or was
Yeah.
it-
So how it worked is I finished my career, and I went on trial. I was over in Europe, and I got a couple of offers there, but I didn't really enjoy it. And there was a woman that I was dating that I thought I wanted to marry, and I did end up marrying just a couple months later. And so I got married, and so playing was very secondary at that time because I was a newly married man and I had a wife. And so you have you're out of college, you got to start working. You said pay bills, but that's what took me to Ferrum, which is an interesting story because I got engaged in March, and I knew that my wife had one more year of college left. So I called the coach and said, hey, I'm going to be in town, and Ferrum's a very small school, very small towns. But I said, hey, look, here's my playing career, and I had just come off from trials. Like, I was fit, I was ready to roll. Do you need any help? And the coach was like, no, we're all set. I was really taken back. I'm like, oh, free help, because I know I'm going to be here. But I didn't think anything of it, and I was starting to pursue some other careers. And then I was actually on a missions trip, and my soon-to-be wife called me and said, the coach is trying to get a hold of you. So I call him from Mexico, and which was a big to-do because not everybody had a cell phone back then. So I was able to get a hold of him, and he's like, hey, my assistant just left. Are you still coming? Would you like to take that position? I said, oh, this is great. So 3 days later, I was back in the States. A week later, I got married, and then I cut my honeymoon short, and our honeymoon was 3 days, and then I came right into preseason, and I started my college career.
What was those first few weeks like in Ferrum, the private school, in the preseason?
It was interesting. It was a lot of change for me. Again, I got married 3 days before I was there, 4 days before I was there. So I had a new wife. I was in a new community, in a new apartment, with a new job. So usually, like this day and time, I would never take on so many new things in life. But when you're young, you're agile and you can do those things. But it was exciting, I was 21 with a wife, and I was in a preseason with a group of guys. That team hadn't had a bunch of success. And that year we had a great season. And again, I attribute that to the coaches before me brought in some really good players. I think I was able to help them, but we had a great year. It was just fun, because when you're with a good group of guys that are on a common goal, it's a fun experience. And so that's what we had that year. And then I finished up that year. And again, through another set of crazy circumstances, which it seems to have happened my whole career, I ended up at Bridgewater College.
So you went back to Harrisonburg, and you started off at Bridgewater as an assistant still?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And when you transitioned into the head coach there, you pretty much revolutionized the program because it wasn't a Division III program back then, right?
It was.
It was?
Yeah. At Bridgewater? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, it was, I'll kind of take you through that, and this is why I would say it was unbelievable. At Ferrum, we had no kind of budget, really. We went to one recruiting trip. It was down in Raleigh. It was the Raleigh shootout. And so I went. It was my first time recruiting. And, the coach gave me some pointers on how to do it. Okay, great. I mean, it's not that big. You go out and watch a field, best couple of players, take some notes. And I was able to sit with a guy named Ian Spooner. And we were just talking. I'd never met him before. And we really hit it off. And then he was like, hey, I'm going to this place for dinner. Would you like to join? Yeah, great. So we went out. It was good. Had a good time. He's the one who called me 4 months later and was like, hey, I have an assistant position in Bridgewater. Would you like to go? Awesome. Off of one night of just kicking it and having a good time. And so he brought me up there, and I was the assistant for the men and the women during that time. So that was extremely busy. I mean, preseason, this is old school. We would do 3 sessions a day for both programs. I mean, I would be on the field all day long. Excuse me. And but it was good. Worked through that, and then they split up the program because he was the head coach for both, and I was the assistant for both. And they split up the program. He wanted to take the women, understandably so. They were in a much better situation. We were really good with our women's program. The men were not good at all. So, but it was a great project for me. Again, I was still young. I don't know, 23, I guess, when I took over, something like that. And I had a lot of energy, and I wanted to prove myself, and I wanted to be good, and so I was was able to attack that project, and I mean, I'm happy with how I left that.
Yeah. I would say it was a success as well. You won Old Dominion Conference Coach of the Year,
Yeah.
and you had a couple of great winning seasons. How did you feel after winning that award?
I felt good. Yeah, I mean, it's nice to be recognized by your peers. And again, through this interview, I can't express it, but how we were so bad. Like, so to be in a spot, we weren't the best team that year. We were really good. And I think if I had the skills I have now with that team back then, I think we could have won the tournament. But again, I was young. You know, there were some things I didn't know. I didn't do a good job with, unfortunately. But it brought me joy because of we were so bad and we used to get crushed, and then to get to that level, you know, there's a nice sense of accomplishment there.
I have a really, really close friend who plays there now.
Oh, nice.
Charles Schweinefuss, the goalkeeper.
Okay.
Shout out Charles. He's amazing, and I'm pretty sure he was delighted with the program. He's graduating too. So.
Yeah, good. That's great. Yeah.
Now, next up, you came to Virginia Tech,
Mm-hmm.
and you started off as an assistant at first for the first 5 years.
Yeah.
What was that change like, and how was it possible that you came here?
Yeah. So again, another story I think you'll particularly find interesting. So with my experience at Bridgewater, Virginia Tech used to run an indoor tournament in Rector, and every team in the state would come because it was inside and you could get started early. So I got to know the head coach, the current head coach at that time, Oliver Weiss. I got to know him well because, like, hey, can we come to the tournament? Yes. So I got to know him through the tournament, and then I'd work at camp. So when the position opened, Jerry Cheynet, who was a long time, he actually still works here, but I think he's been working here for 50 years. He was finally getting out of athletics and retiring. And so I called Oliver because they had to post it. It's a state school, you have to post it. And I asked him, hey, are you just posting because you have to, or are you actually in need? He goes, no, I got someone. We're all good. No problem. And that was right after I won that award. Our team was rolling. Things were cooking for me at Bridgewater. He calls me back like 3 days later and said, hey, the guy changed his mind, is leaving. Send your stuff in. All right. So I was on an interview. There were 3 of us that interviewed. A guy named Scott Black, who eventually worked with us 3 years later. Myself and a guy named Chugger Adair. We were the 3 guys that were for the assistant position. So it's funny that Chugger then picked up on the women's side a couple of years later, and now is the head coach. Yeah, so went through that interview process. I was fortunate to get it. Being a Virginia, player, coach, I think helped that tremendously. And it was a good learning curve. It was very different. The school was very different. Our athletic department was very different. It's changed in so many ways in the 27 years I've been here. But we were pretty good. I mean, we got into the international market heavy early. We went to places that no one else went, and it bears some very good fruit in guys like Patrick Nyarko, just to use an example. But yeah, it was fun.
What would you say was the biggest takeaway from those first 5 years as an assistant before you went on to take on the head coach role?
I played Division I, so you think you know something because you're kind of involved, but when you step across the line to be a coach, there's just so many other attributes. And again, I'd come in, I'd been a head coach, so it's not like I didn't know what it's like to be in front of people or to lead the ship, but it was different. It was certainly different, and so it was good. And Oliver was a good mentor. He was tough. He was very tough, but he was a very good mentor, a very good coach, and I learned a lot during those years. A lot. It was a big growth moment for me.
And you were able to obtain a different kind of award in 2007, the NCSA Atlantic Region Assistant Coach of the Year.
Yeah, we went to the Final Four that year. And if it wasn't for stinking Wake Forest, I think we would have won it. Every team has their nemesis, and Wake Forest has always been one of those, and they were that year. good. We were really good, so were they. So, but yeah, that was a great run. It was fun.
This is totally random, but something I do really like from the old teams was the shirts. When you walk into the indoor facility, the Beamer Lawson, that's what it's called, right?
Yeah.
And you see the boards up there, and you see the shirts. I think they're awesome, and I don't know if I can get my hands on one of those shirts, it would be amazing.
I think those things are long gone,
Yeah.
unfortunately. I should have kept them, but there's no storage for those kind of things. But yeah, no, there's some good ones in there.
Okay, so now your transition to the head coaching job, the first couple of years, you kind of spoke about it a little bit, but when you took the lead, did you bring in new people? What kind of impact did you make in the first few seasons as a head coach?
Well, here's one thing I don't know. Maybe your research hasn't popped up. I took over in some very stressful situation. There were some issues with Oliver and the administration, and so we got put on some penalties during that time. I mean, it was very difficult. And again, I was hired in the middle of the summer. So I went from thinking I was about to get fired in July to getting to be an ACC head coach. It was awesome. But it was difficult in those first years with all the penalties that we had to face. So it was very much an uphill battle. And our record reflects that. I knew we could turn it around. It would just take time, and I would need to get past those situations. And we did in 16, and then made it to the Elite Eight, and we had some really good runs. So yeah, but it was something, because it's fighting Mike Tyson with one hand behind your back. That's no good.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that I believe led to your success as you went on to improve the team over the first few years was your recruiting. You had a lot of recruiting success, in my opinion, and I saw that with your recruitment, you send some players to professional soccer.
Yes.
Moving on, and it's really impressive. So when you're recruiting, whether it's in the U.S. or travel abroad to do it, what are you looking for the most in terms of characteristics of an individual?
So we have player profiles for every position, and so we just look for kids that can get us close to one of our player profiles. Just to give you an example, our center backs, they need to be an A in something. So they either need to be 6'4", they got to run like the wind. One of those two attributes needs to be met. We like to play. We want to keep the ball, so they have to be ball playing. If they're not, they would have to be really special in some other categories, i.e., like, again, 6'4" and can run like the wind or something like that to make up for not playing. And we put such an emphasis on playing, it's hard to overcome that one. So we have that for every position, and so we look for players that meet that profile. Obviously, if you can check every box, it's a slam dunk. Then you just have to get them. And if not, it's what concessions are you willing to make?
So when a player joins the team, what would you like them to know your expectations are from the get-go?
Yeah, we lay that out. We have some things that they can expect from us, and we have some things that we expect from them, and we talk about during the recruiting process. It's not foolproof, but I think it's good. It lays out those expectations, and again, it's very important for me that being a good soccer player is a piece of it for certain. That gets you a phone call, but being a good person, being someone who doesn't cheat, lie, steal, a good teammate, and someone who's a good student, those are still very, very important to me. And you could be the best player, but if you're not good in those other two areas, I won't pick you up. I don't need to. We can find players that do meet all of our criteria. So I really emphasize that, because if for some reason they get here, if they get through our gate and somehow we missed on some of those. I mean, academics is pretty cut and dry. They either have good grades or they don't. But if the character piece is missing, you know, we have to have difficult conversations.
What would you say is the most important individual characteristic for a player? Like self-discipline, a high competitive spirit, confidence?
Honesty.
Honesty?
Honesty. I think you incorporate all things you mentioned with honesty. You know, if I tell you, you know, again, after watching this video, take an honest look at it and tell me what you think. If you're honest, good, we can have a real conversation and it'll help you get better. If you're not honest, you know, you're deceiving yourself and trying to deceive others, and then that leads to all kinds of things. And then when you're asking them like, hey, you need to do these extra reps, or you need to do these things, you know, an honest person's gonna, well, they'll tell you if they're not doing it or if they are, and most of them will want to do those things.
Now, moving on to describing your coaching style, do you think that you are more tough on players, or?
Definitely not. I used to be. I was a lot tougher. Not anymore. I'm soft now, I think. It's interesting. If you get outside the lines, you wouldn't say that I'm soft. You would say very much the opposite. I deal pretty aggressive with crazy behaviors, you know, and some are different than others. And I know everyone makes a mistake, but some things just need to be dealt with the hammer. In the day-to-day, I would think I'm very low-key, you know, because I want to win. I'm a hyper-competitive person, if you talk to anyone who knows me. The team's very important to me, but we spend so much time together. Having a good experience is super important to me. I want guys to leave here saying, man, it was a fun time, it was a great time. So I try to create that kind of environment for the players.
This is an interesting question I found. It's regarding adaptability as a coach. And I don't know if you can describe a specific year or season, but when or what was one time you had to adapt your coaching style? It doesn't have to be tactics. It could be in the locker room personnel, whether it was because of certain strengths of the team or certain weaknesses.
So that's an interesting word that you brought about, and I think over the last couple of years, I would tell you every coach better be adaptable or they're in trouble with what's going on with the house case, transfer portal, all these things, these buzzwords you hear about, and just our culture. Like if you're not adapting, you're dead. It's over. You know, you might as well find another job. And so it's pushing everyone. And I think where it gets really interesting for me personally is finding where my new center is, you know. And again, that's probably why, like, how I was as a young coach, you know, I was very, like, hit everything with a hammer. And now it's like, no, you can't do that, you know. Now some of that's wisdom. Some of it's you're adapting to a new generation of players, you know. I'll give you another example that I'm kind of shooting from the hip here, but how I related to kids pre-COVID versus post-COVID, wow, you want to talk about difference. Those post-COVID kids, especially right after, they were very insecure. I met with them all the time. Yeah, imagine like if you were a senior, well, imagine if your senior year was totally erased, like.
That happened to me actually, yeah.
So maybe you know, it brought in like these insecurities and all this. So with that group particular, I mean, I would meet with them in a month more than I ever met with the previous year's team in 4 months, you know, because they just needed it. So if you definitely have to pay attention. You know, it's not the old school, you know, days with the guy out there with the whistle and barking out orders and all that. I mean, it's just very different. You know?
A lot can change in a year.
Oh, baby. Yeah, you're right about that.
Now, I want to move on to how you balance the team. Now, this question is related to balancing player development, whether it's individual, and then balancing team strategy.
talking about within just a session, throughout a season,
Throughout the season.
or looking at a 3-year period? Throughout the season. So our season, the way that it works is, I'll walk you through a week for us. We usually play on Tuesdays and Fridays. So Sunday's a day off because you have to have a day off per rules. Monday's the day before a game. Tuesday's training. Wednesday's recovery. Thursday's the day before a game. Friday's a game. Saturday's recovery. Sunday's off. So to answer your questions, in season, it's about recovery and tactics once you get going. Because you can't do anything else. There's no time, and even if you had a little bit of time, where can you fit proper training sessions in between 2 games? So individual stuff is more of a spring focus, where we have that time, we have that luxury that we can work on things like we did this spring. Just had players with meetings with players about, like, what do you want to work on, this is what we think you should work on, and then we would have sessions just where we broke everybody up working on all their pieces that we thought needed to get better.
I spoke to Jim Thompson a couple of days ago,
Mhm.
the men's tennis head coach here, and we spoke about the certain players going the extra mile and training, practicing by themselves when nobody's watching. Is that an expectation you would have, or is it just a bonus?
Yeah, especially, again, most of my guys, you have to appreciate, I would say, especially now, 80% of my roster wants to be pros. Okay, if you want to be a pro, this is what you have to do. I'll give you an example. I had a Zoom call here last night. I left about, let's call it 9:45. Our lights were on. I'm like, what's going on over there? I go over there. There's a couple guys playing. Those guys are doing what they want, I preach this to the guys. I preach this to my kids. You want your actions and your words to match each other. Everybody gets in trouble if I say, hey, I want you to do this, but I'm doing something over here. You want to be going in the same direction. So those guys who say they want to be pros, what do you think it takes to be a pro? They're not just giving those out, right? If so, the 3 of us would be pros. That's not the case. You have to work at it. It takes the extra mile. So I think we have a lot of guys who talk about it, and we have some that actually do it. And the hope always is that the guys that are definitely willing to do it will drag the guys that talk about it.
Inspiring others.
Yeah, that's right.
Now, a question that kind of relates to what we were discussing a little bit earlier with the recruiting process. How do you deal with integrating the new players?
The good news is all of our guys live together, so that's a huge piece. And we do some activities during preseason, but it's really just the natural flow of our season helps do that. And also, I would say in the recruiting process, we help on that because we bring in good guys. So they're very welcoming. There's not really a class system. So those are the couple things. But again, because we're a fall sport, you hop right into the fire. And so you're spending all day, every day with your teammates for the first 3 weeks you're here.
And as of now, today, I noticed some of the freshmen that were playing this season really made an impact. I believe Alex Perez is a freshman, right?
AP.
Yeah. And how would you say he integrated to the team? Was it like instantly, or did he have challenges?
They always do. Him and Ian Marcano, I think, have profound impacts. But it's always tough for a freshman. Danny Pereira, who's the #1 draft pick, he wasn't like a superstar from day one because he had to feel comfortable. By the end of his freshman year, he felt comfortable, and then you saw the best of Danny. And I would say the same with AP and Ian. I actually think it was a little more difficult for AP. Ian came from overseas, and so I think there was a little bit more maturity there. But AP's definitely had an unbelievable spring, and I think his next year is going to be really good.
And with the foreign players, do you find that to be a little bit more of a challenge? Because sometimes they might not speak the language or they find it hard to adapt to the country.
Yeah, it's really hard to get into school if you don't speak the language, at least for the guys that I recruit. So most of them have a decent use of the English language. And as far as once they get into our rhythm, especially the university transfers, they do really well here. There's certainly a country by country, right? When I bring a kid from Ghana over, his life experiences are way different than a German or anybody from Iceland. But we take sensitive care because we recruit in those areas of how to do it. Again, someone from Iceland, they get here, they know where to live, they're off and running. I don't really have to worry about them. They'll come to me if they have a question. Someone from Africa, from Ghana, I'd probably say Asia, even though I haven't brought someone directly from like South Korea over yet. We'll watch over them a lot closer. Day-to-day check-in, how are you doing, what's going on, ask them a bunch of questions, just because they're not used to all of this that we have here at Tech.
A question about motivating players. You see it now in the professional scene. We kind of spoke about it, how a coach needs to adapt to new players, new generations. Some of the new generation, they find it hard to be motivated to play. Do you switch it up when it comes to motivating individual players and then motivating the team as a whole?
Yeah. Again, you can't treat everyone the same. You hope, and I talked about this when you asked me about Ferrum, but having everyone on a common goal, I think, helps. You want to make it where if you're not on that common goal, you kind of stand out in the wrong way. And again, you hope that their desire to be a pro or to have a level of success will drive them towards those goals that we have. And again, there are times where I always have individual meetings, so I'm talking through those things and trying to figure out like what's the best way to push some buttons. You know, again, there's some kids you need to bark at them, and they respond really well. You know, they may be out of anger, but they're like, "I'll show this guy." You know, there are other people. If I get on, they like wither. You know, so once I know what levers to pull, you know, we can do that. But again, the overall is hoping as a team that drive, that competitive spirit will come out.
Now, for your tenure here at Virginia Tech, it's been 15 years, 15 seasons or so. What would you say is the biggest thing that has changed from the first couple of seasons and up to now? Like, how did your coaching style develop? You spoke about being less tough, being less aggressive, being more low-key. Were there other changes as well?
Oh yeah, of course. I don't know if I could sit here and list them off, but again, you change, you have to change. Again, some of it's with the time, some of it's with wisdom. You know, as you get older, you've learned a couple of things. You've stepped in some potholes, you're like, I gotta avoid those. I don't know if I could point out any right here on the spot, but certainly, yeah, you change. And the landscape has changed. I mean, when you ask that question, if you think about where college sports was 15 years ago versus now, I mean, it's 15 years ago is probably not even recognizable to you. The rules, if we went over the NCAA rules of 15 years ago, you would laugh, especially if you compared them to today's rules. So it's so different that it's even funny to think that it came from the same spot. Does that make sense? So, yeah.
I want to know, this is just off the top of my head, I don't know why I thought about it. I think it's because you were mentioning rules, and then I thought about VAR and how different that is. But with rules changing and referees changing, when you're on the sideline, there's always going to be frustrating moments. There's calls where you think should have gone the other way. How do you keep your composure on the sideline?
I don't always. I try to, because again, they're refs. They're trying to do the best job that they can, and I prefer just to coach my team and watch us play. But yeah, it's that's another piece that's definitely changed with technology.
Right. Now, I want to talk about your biggest challenge at Virginia Tech.
Ever or currently?
Ever.
Ooh. Well, again, I would say in 2009 when I went through that was probably my biggest challenge. That's hands down, definitely. And then after that, I don't know. I mean, Virginia Tech's a pretty great place. So
Was there anything more recent that was really challenging for you, like the past couple of seasons?
Again, just adapting to the new landscape. I mean, it's not easy, trying to figure everything out with portal and rev share and NIL and all of those things. That's not easy. It's easy to understand. It's much harder to navigate, if that makes sense to you. For certain.
Challenges of being a leader and to navigate. So, I want to move on to some more of the fun stuff with coaching.
Okay.
What do you think is the most memorable moment as a coach at Virginia Tech? I have mine for my 4 years here.
One of my favorite moments I remember is in 2016, we went to IU, and in the Sweet 16, and we went up 1-0, and then they proceeded to pound us. I think the shots were like 30-8 is how it finished. And our goalkeeper, Ben Lundgaard, who was a professional goalkeeper, he was unbelievable that game. I mean, unbelievable. And we actually had a shot at the end of the goal that went off the post, but I thought it was over. I mean, we were running out of gas. They were all over us. And then this kid scores this unbelievable goal in overtime. I mean, unbelievable, world class. And then when you score, it's over. So I remember just being in the hotel after that, and it was really a tremendous moment. That was my favorite moment. And then I think 2018, Danny's last year with us, we lost to Stanford. That was my favorite season.
Hey guys, I know you're probably wondering why I just interrupted Coach Brizendine so abruptly. Well, unfortunately, the SD cards had run out of storage at this point of the interview. So, the last 5 minutes of this interview are lost somewhere in the cloud. I don't know where they are. Basically, they're gone to never be viewed by anybody ever. However, on the bright side, I will gladly explain what we were discussing in the last few minutes while you enjoy some of the highlights of the Virginia Tech 2024-2025 soccer season. As the recording stopped, Coach Briz went on to discuss the importance of the 2018 season, going into detail about how the players were serious about winning and how everyone on the staff, including the coaches, physios, nutritionists, and advisors all shared the same goal of going all the way. Basically, everybody was on the same page and everybody wanted to win. The spirit that year was spectacular, and it led to the Hokies going another season with over 10 wins, whilst also reaching the round of 16, an achievement which they accomplished twice within the 3-year period of 2015 to 2018. After Coach Briz finished his response about memorable moments, I went on to share one of my own. So back in 2021, I went to a game at Thompson Field with a friend of mine, and we watched as Danny Flores scored an unbelievable solo goal in the last minute of overtime at Thompson Field to secure the win over Notre Dame 2-1. We moved on to talking about more special moments at Thompson Field and what those moments feel like. Coach Briz disclosed that as a coach, these moments are truly valuable, but they're very short-lived because within the hour of a big win at home, just like the one at Notre Dame, Coach Briz is already planning for the next game. While the team is celebrating in the locker room, sometimes he may join, but most of the time, he's not in the locker room when they're celebrating. He's either dealing with media or he's already planning with the rest of the coaching staff what went wrong and what was good. Basically, just planning for the next game. To follow that, I moved on to the next topic, Coach Brizendine and his win record, and how he is only one of 3 soccer coaches at Virginia Tech to surpass 100 wins, which is definitely an incredible achievement. Coach Brizendine expressed that he is proud to be recognized for this milestone and that he is very happy for reaching this achievement. However, he said that his focus is more directed toward winning the next game. He definitely values the 100 wins, but he does not look back at his past wins because what is more important to him is winning in the future and making Virginia Tech the top soccer program in the country. To end the interview, the last question I asked Coach Brizendine was, what does he look forward to next season? He was able to share his excitement for the new players joining the squad, and he alluded to the strengthening of the midfield. To be honest, after watching most of the games last season, I thought the midfield was already pretty strong. We had players like Matthias Johannes, Ian Marcano, Alex Perez, Sammy Colby. They really held it down in the middle. A lot of them were strong, very technical. They won us a lot of games as well. But if Coach Briz says that there's more coming, hey, it's all the more to be excited to go watch some home games down at Thompson Field. Now, with that being said, I hope you all enjoyed the video, and of course, make sure to visit Thompson Field next fall to watch the Virginia Tech men's soccer team, because as we said, there is a lot to look forward to. Thanks for watching.